Next, we're going to move to item 3, approach for a preliminary engineering assessment for College Boulevard, Reach A, Capital Improvement Program, project number 3636.
Thanks, Jericho. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Very good. So, my name is Hossein Ajid. I'm an engineering manager. Joining me is Mr. Tom Frank, transportation director, and we are here this afternoon to present on approach for preliminary engineering design and assessment for College Boulevard Reach A, also known as College Boulevard Extension. Recommend action for this afternoon would be that the Traffic and Mobility Commission receive a presentation and provide input on approach for preliminary engineering design and assessment for College Boulevard Reach A Capital Improvement CIP project number 3636. A little bit of background on this item. On July 16 of last year, staff presented to the City Council 8 efficient street facilities as part of fiscal year 17-18 growth management plan monitoring program. On December 17th of last year, staff returned to the City Council to present on the first 4 deficient street facilities. And on March 2nd of this year, staff presented the second 4 deficient street facilities to the T&MC. And that's just as a reminder, the second 4 deficient street facilities included LFMZ 15, where this College Boulevard extension is located. On April 6th of this year, staff presented to Traffic and Mobility Commission on determination of the second 4 deficient street facilities and financing program options for College Boulevard extension. In that meeting, Traffic and Mobility Commission supported the city-led College Boulevard extension. And on May 5th of this year, the City Council directed the staff to pursue a city-led financing program for College Boulevard extension, which would include a preliminary engineering and preliminary design and engineering assessment for this project. And that would be the item that we are presenting this afternoon. Just as a quick reminder, College Boulevard Gap in existing condition is located in Local Facility Management, LFMZ 15. Just quick background on Local Facility Management Plan, LFMP for Zone 15, provides a plan for public facilities needed to accommodate development within Zone 15. Original Zone 15 LFMP was adopted by the City Council in 1990. The most current amendment, which is Amendment E, was adopted by the City Council in 2012. And LFMP 15 was prepared pursuant to the city's growth management program and incorporates and implements 1986 citywide facilities and improvement plans, CFIP. This aerial view shows existing condition of College Boulevard Gap. As you can see, there is a gap between ECR and Cannon on College. And this aerial view shows the same location with the extension project. So we can say this is basically exhibition of the ultimate condition. I should note that the alignment of College Boulevard has been established as part of the EIR number 98-02. As you can see, the proposed project goes over Agua Hedionda Creek. And so as part of this project, there is a proposed bridge there. College Boulevard Extension Project, as it is described in the city's CIP and also Zone 15 LFMP, includes the following improvements: full width grading to major arterial standards, paved travel lanes, and sidewalks. And depending on who was supposed to build it or finance it, it was supposed to be either 2-lane or 4-lane equivalent options for travel lanes. It also includes median and landscaping, like I said, a bridge over Agua Hedionda Creek, undergrounding utilities such as potable water, sewer, and storm drains, drainage facilities, and also intersection improvement and street lights. And as I mentioned, the project, including the bridge over the Agua Hedionda Creek, was approved pursuant to the EIR 98-02. Traffic study based on the existing traffic study for Zone 15 at ultimate conditions. A two-lane option with signals will be inadequate to serve anticipated traffic volume. Two-lane option is not considered viable with Zone 15 intersection volumes. Four-lane option is anticipated to operate at or over capacity in both AM and PM peak hours. And the study recommends a four-lane option or equivalent, which will provide relief on surrounding networks, including El Camino Real and Canem. As you probably know, multiple developers have come to the city and gone through entitlement process for the past 10 years. And they have basically submitted different maps or engineering plans to the city for review. What I'm showing here is from tentative track map for Cantorini Ranch. For that project, the developer proposed a two-lane option for outside subdivision boundary, as you see down here. The same project proposed a four-lane option for the portion of the project within the subdivision. Like I said, I'm showing this as an example. Obviously, we are going to go through hiring a consultant and the full preliminary engineering. These are just examples of previous engineering plans provided by the developers. As mentioned earlier, City Council has directed the staff to start preliminary engineering for this project. And based on the direction received, the staff is currently working on requests for qualifications to advertise the project for preliminary engineering, design, and assessment. And we are here to basically get commission input on that matter. The scope of services for the proposed RFQ, relatively standard scope of service, but with some kind of complication related to environmental review and mitigation and other complexity for this project. But as of right now, the scope of services include land use review, land surveying, preliminary environmental impact and mitigation assessment, right-of-way verification and land acquisition, historic resource review, assessment of LFMZ 15 and general plan compliance, community outreach program to get the community input regarding stakeholders' concerns and goals. Scope of services also include various type of technical engineering reviews and studies, such as hydraulic calculations, hydrology reports, geotechnical investigation, traffic studies, civil engineering plans, including grading plans, improvement plans, technical reports, structural engineering analysis, which includes the proposed bridge design, stormwater quality management plan, and obviously construction cost estimates. These are all in preliminary level engineering documentation. A few challenges related to the project. Obviously, this is going to be a very challenging project. I'm highlighting some of the most important items that we need to consider, and they are incorporation of proposed drainage master plan projects, proposed bridge over Agua Hedionda Creek, relocation of RV parking and maintenance yard and community garden, and of course, environmental impacts and mitigation. There are 3 proposed drainage projects in 2008 drainage master plan within the project area, and they are drainage project BJ1, which is a detention basin and reinforced concrete box culvert at College Boulevard. This basin is located at southeast corner of Cannon Road and College Boulevard. Second project would be drainage project BR, which is a 66-inch reinforced concrete pipe at north end of College Boulevard Bridge. And the third drainage project would be a project BLL, and it is a 90-inch reinforced concrete pipe at south end of College Boulevard Bridge. This map is from 2008 drainage master plan, and it kind of identifies the three drainage projects that I just mentioned. And in the next few slides, I'm going to briefly touch on each of these projects. The first one is drainage project BJ1, which is a proposed detention basin and reinforced concrete box culvert outlet. So as you see in the aerial view, this detention basin is proposed to be constructed where currently we have RV parking and maintenance yard and also the community garden. Therefore, construction of this basin will require relocation of these two facilities. The culvert would be underneath of the proposed College Boulevard extension. Basin will occupy approximately 8 acres of land, and by design, it contains up to 49 acre-feet of storm runoff during a 100-year storm event. Drainage project BR and BLL, as you can see in this aerial view, it kind of shows where these projects will be constructed. Project BR will be a 66-inch RCP culvert, reinforced concrete culvert, to convey tributary flows under proposed College Boulevard road embankment. And the project BLL is a proposed 90-inch reinforced concrete pipe storm drain, which convey runoff from College Boulevard into the Agua Hedionda Creek. Like I mentioned, there will be a bridge over Agua Hedionda Creek. As you probably know, Agua Hedionda Creek is a FEMA map floodplain. Therefore, the proposed bridge must be designed in a way that there will be no rise in flood elevations. I think I touched on this one. This aerial also shows the existing community garden and RV parking and maintenance yard, which will need to be relocated as part of College Boulevard extension, mainly because for that location, basin BJ will be constructed. I mentioned one of the challenges of this project will be environmental impacts and mitigation. As part of EIR 98-02, there is a proposed mitigation site that is highlighted in this map, which satisfies biological mitigation measures for BJ, Basin BJ and College Boulevard extension. Also includes the mitigation for the bridge. This aerial view shows the same location. Basically, these two parcels are privately owned, and these one of the parcels would be a potential location for College Boulevard mitigation. Next steps, following TMC's input, staff will finalize and release RFQ by the end of this year. Upon that, staff will go through a evaluation and ranking the selected, the received qualifications and select consulting firm. The next step would be negotiating final scope of work and fee schedule with the selected consultant. And upon that, the staff will bring a staff report to the City Council in spring 2021 to approve a professional services agreement. And the next step after that would be issuing a notice to proceed to the consultant to start the preliminary engineering design. Just reminding everyone, the recommended action for this afternoon to receive a presentation and provide input on approach for preliminary engineering design and assessment for College Boulevard extension. And with that, I thank you for your attention, and we'll be happy to answer any question you may have.
Do we have any public comments?
Yes, we do have one public comment.
Okay, so before we gonna, oh, you're gonna read it, right?
Yeah, I can read this into the record. All right, so the public comment is from Brian Phillips of Carlsbad. And here we go. So the scope of the intended College Boulevard Reach A project will traverse and/or be adjacent to the original homestead of the Marin Rancho, the first homestead and rancho in the early 1800s, granted by the King of Spain or Mexico to the Marin family during the Spanish or Mexican occupation of Presidio San Diego. The Marin Rancho was the first permanent ranch home built in North County during the time that the indigenous peoples existing in the area were primarily nomadic hunters, gatherers, and fishers. This Marin land grant structure still remains intact today at its original location within and adjacent to the project limits and may be classified as the oldest and most important structure standing in Carlsbad today. The rancho was owned by Senior Marin and stretched from present-day Oceanside to present-day La Costa, easterly to present-day Vista San Marcos. Later in its history, the rancho owned by Senior Marin was managed by Mr. Kelly, and in subsequent generations, following the passing of Senior Marin, deeded to the 8 surviving offsprings of Mr. Kelly's brother. The preliminary engineering scope should include the facts of the original land grant plat and the building of the Marin homestead within adjacent to the College Reach A project limits. Said RFQ scope to include the stated public historical objective to preserve the homestead from any and all deleterious actions capable of undermining and negatively impacting the environment and integrity of the homestead site and structure, and the RFQ scope to include the further stated public policy objective to identify measures within the project scope that will preserve and enhance the Marin homestead structure in its location within and/or adjacent to CIP 3636 project limits. Thank you for your positive consideration of my request. Brian Phillips, 5465 Wolverine Terrace, Carlsbad.
Okay, thank you. Before I'm going to open it up to commissioners, I just want to say how impressed I am with staff bringing this up so soon. It was a lot of work and collaborative work to even get this at the council and get it approved, and it's just amazing. I did not expect it to see it this soon, so thank you for all the work. Now we have commissioner comments. If you raise your hand, I will call you in the order that I see it. I see 1. Okay, 2. Okay, we're going to start with Commissioner Pensier.
Okay, I just wonder, we've already decided, I guess, that this has to be 4-lane. I wonder, and at 4-lane, it's still going to fail at build out. So what do we do after that? That's kind of, I don't know whether I need an answer to that question. It seems.
Well, I can address the item of if it needs to be 4 lanes. What the discussion was in the last staff report that went to City Council in May regarding the subject is it was a 4-lane or 4-lane equivalent. And the reason why we put that wording in there is there's been discussion, as the commission knows, regarding traffic operations on the existing College Boulevard north of this project, in particular regarding multimodal use operations of the roadway and safe routes to school issues. So we want to make sure that during the development of this project, we do extensive public outreach. We completely understand what the community concerns are. Similar to that comment we heard today, that's the exact type of feedback we're looking for. And we want to make sure that we address all of those concerns when we're studying the project and developing the design. So the reason why we use that wording equivalent is there could be a possible alternative where we look at alternate intersection analysis or alternate intersection control, such as roundabouts. and look at the ultimate lane configuration and make sure it's meeting, one, the traffic projections, which we want that roadway to meet, but then also to make sure we're meeting the community needs for that roadway. So it is open. The other comment I wanted to emphasize is the issues which Mr. Ajide was talking about regarding the geotechnical, the environmental, and the structural items and the hydrology issues. Those are all the large scale project costs, which a project of this nature includes. The finished surface improvements like the lane configurations and the landscaping, those are relatively small or minor costs when you're looking at a project of this magnitude. So although they get a lot of project or community focus, they're not a big cost consideration. So that's why we use that wording in there, and that's a great first comment, Commissioner.
Okay, I have two other things. You just led into one of them, is that I think what I saw with respect to the 2-lane option was that with traffic signals, it's not going to work. How about with roundabouts? Is that what you were trying to say, that perhaps with the roundabouts, just 2-lane would work, at least for?
Right, with the earlier traffic projections, which we were looking at possibly a 1-lane roundabout would work. We'd want to study it further, obviously, but we do want to make sure that we're carrying the projected 4-lane equivalent. We want to make sure that we address that issue. So we can't say for certain at this point, but yeah, that was the intent, is to be able to have that conversation and be able to study it further.
Okay, one last question.
It doesn't have to be your last. I mean, this is what we're here for. We want to hear your comments. This is why we're here.
Could the scope of work include a Class 1 2-way off-road multi-use facility or an all-weather trail along the east side of the right-of-way to connect El Camino Real to Cannon? And could this be a part of TDM? You could use TDM to fund it, perhaps, to encourage active transportation to the high school.
Sounds like a great comment. What? I'm sorry, I didn't miss the first part. Was that a comment or a suggestion, or what were your? Did you have a question?
Well, it was a question and a comment, both.
Okay,
but,
so I'm sorry, I missed your question, but it's
yeah. Well, actually, there are actually 2 questions. Could the scope of work include consideration for a Class 1 trail, Class 1 2-way off-road multi-use facility, rather than Class 4 attached to the road? This is something completely off the road on the east side. Can we get some right-of-way over there when you're buying right-of-way, so that we can provide a completely off-road facility that would allow cyclists to go both ways, and also pedestrians? The Class 1 is a multi-use facility. It's not exclusively for cyclists. So, in fact, things like this, when they're built, are usually hugely popular with the people that live there, so they can get in and out of their neighborhoods without having to get in their, grab the car keys whenever they leave. And especially because of the school. The school is right there. So.
Yes, so your question is, yes, it could be a part of the project. I think that's the type of comment we're looking for. And I think it would be helpful to have commissioners join in the conversation and discuss that point and offer other comments. But it's a good suggestion. I think it's something that I thought would possibly come up. And yeah, to answer the question, it is something that could develop into the scope of the project if the community is interested in pursuing something like that.
So it's my understanding that staff and city is going to go to the community for public outreach to get this kind of comments, right?
We are. That's going to be a part of the scope of work for the consultant, is to have community outreach events so we can get further community input. But we're looking for your feedback on the project at this point, and I'm sure you'll have plenty of other times to provide your feedback.
Right. I just wanted to make sure that commissioners know that this is whatever we're discussing and here, it's not the final.
Absolutely.
The community will get an input to say if they want public, class 1, or if they want some kind of transportation for the students, or whatever their needs are in that area.
Right. That's a good point. And then also, I'd like to just share with the commission that on projects of this magnitude, there's going to be many different suggestions, and there's going to be some groups that favor certain alternatives or suggestions, and some people don't like other people's suggestions, and that's natural with a project of this type and of this magnitude. So what I've enjoyed in Carlsbad is the citizens are very respectful, and they listen to the comments, and they we can address them in a professional manner. So even though parties don't always agree, the scope of the project will be that we can develop the project in a really professional and respectful manner, and I expect the commission to help with that effort.
Sounds good. Commissioner Linke, you have comments?
Yeah. So because the topic came up, I'm just going to share my viewpoint from when we passed this originally. The Zone 15 owners are, as I understand it, are essentially responsible for building 2 lanes. But the other 2 lanes are essentially compensating for all of the traffic that's clogging up Cannon and El Camino Real. So from my perspective, 2 of those lanes are the responsibility of the city. And ideally, we would have had that project in our traffic impact fee program for the last several years when we do those streets were failing, and we could have been accumulating funds for that part, but we didn't do that. But it's something we can do now. And I hope that the developers will be obligated, because the first 2 lanes probably you could consider to be the expensive ones. Adding 2 more lanes is not as expensive. So I hope staff can have the developers be obligated to pay that the majority of the cost of those 4 lanes. But it just is sort of coincidental that the extra traffic that's overflowing on Cannon and El Camino Real right now basically fills 2 lanes exactly. And the projected traffic from Zone 15 owners also approximately fills 2 lanes. So yes, they claim it's over capacity, but it's really right at capacity. And if you look at the projections and how they did it for Zone 15, I think there's a big over projection of how much traffic will actually come from there. So I don't think it'll be over capacity, but it's probably not, in my view, enough or low enough that you can get by with just 2 lanes. But we should certainly, my suggestion would be that staff take another look at maybe a more realistic projection of traffic that's coming out of Zone 15 to determine what actually is needed there, and maybe 2 lanes are enough. Other comment was that I support the comment that came in that about the Marin Homestead, and Commissioner Pensier's request to have a Class 1 bike facility, or if that's not possible due to right-of-way or environmental issues, of the Class 4. So I don't know if we're going to be making any motions, but I would support having staff consider those items as part of going forward on this.
I believe staff is taking in consideration all our comments. That's what the item is, but if Mr. Frank wants us to make a motion, we can do that.
I would like to add that the commission, or the comments that I'm hearing so far, are exactly what we're looking for. That's the exact type of feedback we're looking for. If you feel like you'd like to make a motion, you can. Otherwise, the comments will be documented in the minutes, and we'll consider them when we are developing our RFQ scope. So it's at your pleasure. If you want to pass a motion at the end of the item, you can. It's not necessary. Robbie, did you have any comments on this? Excuse me, Mr. Contreras.
Yeah, I was just going to echo exactly what you said. The minutes will reflect the sentiment of the council, or excuse me, the commission. So dealer's choice, whatever is your pleasure.
I think it's fine. We've been building this trust with staff, and I trust that our comments are incorporated. So Commissioner Hunter, do you have any comments? No. Commissioner Fowler, do you have any comments?
Yes. So I appreciate that Commissioner Linke brought up the financing aspect of this, and so I think we're treading on the edges of what our responsibility is on this. But I will, so I'm making any particular point, except that what's interesting about this is that a few months ago, or whenever it was, the city council voted, and I guess it's the way it works, is that they let $3.5 million or so to engineering, but also I think a large part of that was to find financing for the project. So we don't know where the financing is going to look like. And I think people are very, very focused on that as to the role of developers in the financing scheme. And there is an idea that because of what the state is saying, that we're retreating from putting the developers, giving them the responsibility to provide basically most of the financing for this. So that's unresolved. But I think what's interesting about it is that these two things are going in parallel, and there's going to be a point at which they collide or come together when there's financing at a plan that would result from these activities. And then we're all ready to go, so we got to go, and then how are you going to object, right? So I'm not crazy about, I think it should be not in parallel. I think some financing issues should be resolved before the engineering starts, because there's going to be a big implication that everything is ready to go and we can't stop it now. It's a train that's moving out of the station right now. But such is the case for projects of these kinds, I guess. So that's just my comment and my feeling about it. And so that's that.
Ms. Gomez came on. So that means it's serious. She's got an answer for you, Commissioner Fowler.
Good afternoon, Commissioner Fowler, and thank you for your comments. What I wanted to point out is that prior to the actual financing program considerations, is the first step is actually what we're doing now, which is the preliminary engineering assessment. So you're right that it's not necessarily in parallel, that it will be more sequential for us to have an idea of what the costs would be. To refresh your memory, and you're correct, we were looking at about $3 million for the preliminary design assessment at that time. As you may recall from the May presentation, the cost estimate for the actual construction for 4 lanes was estimated to be approximately $30 million in round numbers. So for us to have a better idea of what the cost would be, we're moving forward with bringing the consultant on board to get us closer to, are we talking 30 million? Are we talking 20? Or where are we with regards to the actual cost? And based on that, there will be a separate effort with regards to the financing to take a look at the different options. So, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gomez. Also, hopefully, I saw you, Commissioner Linke. I know that prices for raw material and construction materials are about 30% today because of COVID and what's happening. So hopefully they go down before we actually start construction on this. Commissioner Linke, you have a comment?
Yeah, I forgot. I also, similar to Chair Gokin, want to deeply thank staff for progressing on this project in a timely fashion. I'm impressed and very happy about that. And another quick comment, I've heard from people, this is, as Mr. Frank said, there's going to be some people who maybe are opposed to the project, maybe due to the financing, but also due to environmental impacts. You know, creating a road through a place where there's no road, there's going to be some environmental legitimate concerns about that. At the same time, then there's other people who say that some of the developers are going to be building affordable housing there, which is another important thing that we need in Carlsbad, so that our service workers don't have to live so far away and have to be driving in, you know, dozens of miles to get here. So there's a lot of trade-offs here, but I think the benefits will outweigh the costs in this case. That's it.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Linke. Anybody else? Commissioner Fowler, you have a follow-up?
Yeah, I'm not saying I'm against this or against planning or anything like that, but I do believe that financing is kind of a core issue here. And I just wanted to make the observation that as these things move forward, it gets momentum, and these, you know, kind of issues that are important to some people in the community, they just kind of become irrelevant, and that's all. And so, you know, I do appreciate all the work that staff is doing in their mission and completing their mission, and I understand the internal logic of the process, and that's, you know, I'm familiar with very large scale, complicated projects with a lot of moving parts and the requirements of doing that. But nonetheless, you know, it's a concern of mine. So that's the point I'm trying to make.
Thank you, Commissioner Fowler. This is why I like our Carlsbad community, because we are able to agree to disagree respectfully, and everybody is able to express their opinions and be listened to. So I really appreciate everybody's comment. Any other comments from commissioners? Okay, I don't see any other comments. Commissioner Pensier?
Yeah, it's not a new comment, but I'd like to formalize what I said earlier as well, ask that what I had proposed be included as an input or a suggestion for the staff to consider. And I'd like to first of all say that I want to clarify the difference between a Class 1 and a Class 4 facility and how that might impact the roadway itself. First of all, Class 1 is a multi-use facility. It's not exclusively for cyclists like the Class 4. So people can walk on it. They can, you know, they can do anything they want on it as long as they don't drive a motor vehicle on it. So this is similar to the San Luis River path in Oceanside. It's also similar to the Coastal Rail Trail in Carlsbad, in the two sections that we have. So that's Class 1. Class 4 is also completely separate, but it's part of the roadway, and it is for the exclusive use of cyclists, so people aren't allowed to walk there. So it's, and neither one of those things are required usage for cyclists. So that means that your existing roadway will still need to have bike lanes, or if not bike lanes, they don't have to have sharrows. It has to have some, you know, cyclists will be able to use it. They don't have to use either a Class 1 or a Class 4. So my proposal was really geared towards Class 1 because it has so much more flexibility in who uses it. It gets used a lot more if anybody can use it, not instead of just cyclists. And we have, what we have here is a fresh pallet. You know, you've got a whole bunch of empty land, and you're going to have to buy some of it anyway to get the right of way. So if you don't do it now, you're never going to be able to do it later. And to be able to include this as part of the proposal that goes to, when you start going to the public, if you explain this, and then, you know, if you don't explain this, you don't give them the chance to say, oh yeah, that's a really good idea. If it's not clearly explained to them that this is a possibility, then you won't get any support for it. So you actually, you know, you need to build that support simply by showing them what is possible and what they could have if they want. So my proposal would be that the staff would include that in the request for proposal for the consultant to at least provide that as an option.
Okay, are you able, Mr. Frank, to do this just on our comments, or do you want us to make a motion?
For something like that, I think I would prefer a motion, and to address the commissioner's comments. We're familiar with the operations of a roadway. As you know, I worked for a city to the north of us and was involved in some gap closure projects and also some road realignment projects. And I know Commissioner Pensier, you're really familiar with the one along the coastline, and I hear you regarding the class 1 bike facility, and you still have to have the class 2 bike facilities or accommodate the vehicular bicyclists. So we get that. There's going to be plenty of conversation on those topics. I would prefer, if the commission feels comfortable now giving that type of comment, to put it in a motion. If you don't feel comfortable, you can leave it as comments. So I'll leave it up to you.
Okay, Commissioner Pensier, do you want to make the motion?
I would make that as a motion.
Okay, can you restate the motion, what you're trying to say?
Let's see, let me try and read it.
Don't make it too long so they can.
No, I'm gonna try and make it pretty short. The motion would be to include in the scope of work a class 1, which is a 2-way off-road multi-use facility along the east side of the right-of-way to connect El Camino Real to Cannon.
That's
Okay,
good.
do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, Commissioner Pensier made the motion, with Commissioner Hunter seconded. Commissioner Linke, do you have a comment?
I had a question. So this is just to consider it. Is that what that the language was, to consider a class 1, or sorry, class 1?
Well, there's a motion to include it as part of the request for proposal because that's what we were asked to do.
Okay.
Yes.
I would go along with the Commissioner Linke, though, as a look at it as an option, and when doing the proposal, it's not part of the RFP. It is, hey, look at this also when you're doing it.
Okay.
Because my concern is that if that takes up a lot more width that we can't do, I don't know what the implications would be. I mean, I hope that we have it and it's environmentally acceptable, but if we don't, then I think we have to make it an option. I don't know if staff has any input, and I don't know if, so I had also requested the Marin homestead consideration, but that's probably not a formal enough thing that would need to go into motion, but I don't know if that should be included.
No, I think we're good with the Marion suggestion, and that will be included in the environmental review. On this, I think your suggestion is appropriate to have the wording consider. You know, we will be looking at different alternatives, so I think that's appropriate language.
Is it possible to get a copy of that letter? That's a very interesting letter, and I don't really know anything about it. Can I get a copy of that somehow?
Yeah, I'd be happy to send that to the commission.
Thank you.
Part of the minutes, right?
It is included in
I
the
was
minute.
thinking about that. Well, it certainly would be part of the minute, or is it?
Not the minutes that we get.
That's fine. Keep it with the minutes. I don't think you have to do anything special for me. Thanks.
Peter, you okay modifying your motion? You're muted.
Can you clarify what we did? What the modification?
All we did is it's not part of the proposal. It's a look at it as a consideration. So
That's an alternative, right? To get the pros and the cons, if possible.
yeah, when you're asking for the consultants to look at things, we want to make sure that's one of the considerations they look at. Is that right, Tom?
Yeah, I think that's right. If Commissioner Pensier's feels like that's what he was intending, I could share with you, there's probably only so many alternatives that we can really look at. And that's one that at least I was already considering. I thought that would come forward from the public, and yeah, I think using the word consider is appropriate, because as the other commissioners have mentioned, there will be other alternatives, one being very similar to what we have out north of Cannon Road. So we want to present those and receive feedback from the community, and there'll be pros and cons to each alternative. And at the end of the day, there'll be likely a preferred alternative that comes before, or actually is discussed at a commissioners meeting, and then it will go to city council at some point. So at this point, I think it's appropriate to use that word and consider.
Okay, Commissioner Pensier, do you want to restate it, or you want me to restate it?
I'm still not sure I know how exactly to restate it, but
instead of including in RFQ for the consultant to consider adding this.
Okay, so
to consider adding a class 1 bike facility from ECR to Cannon Road.
Right, and I guess I would just add one other thing to that, and that is that if it's not feasible to do it as a class 1, class 1 has to meet certain standards, has to be a certain width, has to be paved, has to be, there's a lot of stuff that has to go along with it. It makes it reasonably expensive. But if that is not possible, then the other alternative is to use the Carlsbad Trail. And we have a trail system throughout the city that can be used. It's not paved, but if it can be made all weather, it could serve the same purpose for the same number of people for quite a bit less cost. So, it could be either one as far as I'm concerned, but as you mentioned, you regardless of what you do, you still have to have the class 2s on the road to be consistent with what we've done so far.
Right. I think if you just leave it at us to consider the class 1, there's always that fallback position. So I'm not sure, unless you want to add that wording now. If you feel strong about it, you can add that wording.
Stick with class 1.
Yeah, let's just stick with class 1. And the way you started it out, Chair Gogan,
Okay,
and then just make it a class 1 from El Camino Real to Canada.
Made the motion for the consultant to look at an alternative to add a class 1 multi-use facility east of College Extension. And Commissioner Hunter seconded. Are we ready to go do we have any other comments before we go for vote?
I think it was just at the beginning of your motion to just make sure it said consider a class 1 along the alignment from El Camino Real to Cannon Road. I'm sorry, I didn't hear that word when you were when you explained your motion, Chair.
Ellie, you got it? Okay, Ellie got it.
Okay.
And I guess, one more thing to clarify is it should be on the east side so it connects to high school. Okay, not the west side where you still run into the problem with that intersection. So the idea is to provide a pretty clear pathway for off-road use for people, for active transportation to and from that school.
Yes.
East side of College Boulevard, right?
East side of College, correct. If that's the direction that's El Camino Real, we're talking about north, south, and
No, we got it.
Okay, so can we go for a vote?
Yes. Commissioner Wanamaker.
Aye.
Commissioner Linky.
Aye.
Commissioner Fowler.
Aye.
Commissioner Pensiers.
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter.
Aye.
Vice Chair Perez is absent. Chair Goken.
Yes. Please note it passed, not unanimously because we don't have Commissioner Perez, but it passed 6-1 as Commissioner Perez is absent. Okay.